What led you to wanting to do this? Why, and what is it that you primarily found?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for this opportunity. First, I must just thank the MPLs of the MK party in Gauteng. They raised this issue with the Premier on their Q&A on Rule 130 to deal with the issue of Kleinfontein, to make sure there are no apartheid enclaves as we perceive it, as it were. So that was the first thing. So followed to that, we then, as the MK party in Parliament, were, as a government in waiting. By the way, it's important for everybody to know that we are not an opposition party in the sense of the word of the DA, that we're a number two, that we're an opposition trying to correct the ANC, whatever they were doing. We are not in that space. We are a government soon to be. We are a government in waiting. We are contesting number one. So for us as the MK party, part of this was to talk to the stakeholders, to prepare them for us as the MK party as we take over. And part of that was to look into the Constitution and look at some of the clauses which are not properly understood. One of those clauses is Section 235 of self-determination. Now, that clause has been, let's just be nice, because as MK party, we're not the fighting party. We're adults. So we're saying we think that people have misunderstood Section 235. That section does not create apartheid states. That section does not create whites-only area. That section was meant to actually ensure that all cultures are actually protected and all that. But we can't protect the one by excluding the other. So that's the thing. Now, we want to say to people of Kleinfontein, people of ORANIA, people of Eureka, because they are constitutionalists, we want to say to them, they must look at they mustn't go very far. Start where the Constitution starts, at Chapter 1. See that the issue of freedoms is guaranteed in Chapter 1. It's one of the cornerstone values of this Constitution, the human dignity, equality. All of that is in Chapter 1. And the importance of this being in Chapter 1, although you can also find it in Chapter 2 in the Bill of Rights, but the importance of finding it in Chapter 1 is that any change that is in Chapter 1 requires 75% majority, not the 2/3 that you find in the rest of the Constitution. In Chapter 1, which just shows the weightiness of that chapter. And also in that Chapter 1, there's a section there that deals with the supremacy of the Constitution, that any act or conduct not consistent with the Constitution is null and void. Now, to be here and being told about some agreement in Codesa, some agreement between the ANC sellout arrangement with the people in Codesa, all of those agreements must be tested against the Constitution as the Constitution stands. Now, we can't be held to ransom here because of some sellout agreement that would have happened before our time. We're not interested in that. We're interested in the rule of law, the Constitution as it currently stands. And as it stands, this Constitution, it does not want discrimination. It wants human dignity. Now, if I go to Kleinfontein today, I had a discussion here with Danny and Rian and all of that to say, if Manyi has to be in Kleinfontein, what would it take? Then they mention all kinds of things. A very elegant thing that in the sum total, because you're African, you can't be there. For instance, they would say, no, we don't discriminate on race, but we are here to make sure that our culture is preserved. So as long as you accept our culture, you accept our religion, you accept our whatever, and you accept. So basically, for me to live in Kleinfontein, for me to live in ORANIA, I must renounce myself, I must denounce myself, I must be out of myself.
Okay.
I must assimilate. Let me just complete this point.
Yes.
I must assimilate. I have a problem with this because then it means that their understanding of preservation of their culture means excluding other cultures. That's not what I mean, if Danny or Rian or any Afrikaner had to go to KZN, any place in Zululand, anywhere in there, they would be welcome. If they were to go to Eastern Cape, anywhere, they would be welcome. It doesn't matter whether it can go to Limpopo, they'll be welcome. Why can't I be welcome as who I am in Kleinfontein? Why can't I be welcome as who I am in ORANIA? Why must I accept? Why must I assimilate? This is the problem.
Right.
So we're saying Section 235 of the Constitution must be amended. And the amendment is a very simple one. It's just to clarify that that section does not create an excuse for apartheid enclaves.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what stands out. Again, you describe it as an apartheid enclave. Donnie, I want to bring you in here. Thank you so much for making time for us. I mean, you, as well as Mr. Manyi, would have had a very busy day in conversation with each other, and perhaps were able to get some nuggets from that discussion. Mr. Manyi talks about the right to self-determination in the Constitution not superseding, for instance, the importance of protecting human rights and freedoms and non-racialism, non-sexism and other parts that are raised in Section 1 of the Constitution. Firstly, Kleinfontein, would you describe it as an apartheid enclave? So as myself, Naledi Moleo, could I, as a black person, find space to live within the community of Kleinfontein?
Absolutely not. Apartheid and Kleinfontein can't even be mentioned in the same sentence. Apartheid is long dead, buried, will never ever return again. Kleinfontein is all about culture. It's not about race. And it's a pity that news has to grasp and confuse culture and race. If I dimmed my light right now, and you didn't see my face, and I presented myself as an Afrikaner, would you then have an issue with me if you couldn't see my skin color? Kleinfontein is not about skin color. It is not about race. Yes, it is absolutely about culture. The concept of joining apartheid and ORANIA or Kleinfontein or any other settlement in one sentence, that is contradictory. How can you be in support of your culture and automatically a racist?
Okay.
That doesn't work.
So do answer this. I am Naledi Moleo, a black South African woman. Perhaps I may have some cultural similarities, but would I find a home living in Kleinfontein that would please or displease the people of Kleinfontein?
Naledi, you introduced yourself with your race first. Your race is irrelevant. You would present yourself as Naledi. I'm a full-blooded Afrikaner. I speak Afrikaans fluently. I love the Afrikaans people, and I want to live amongst Afrikaners. And then the ones who would be, you're welcome. I do not know.
What is a full-blooded Afrikaner? What is a full-blooded Afrikaner? Describe a full-blooded Afrikaner for me.
I can easily describe a full-blooded Afrikaner as a person without using his race. It is somebody who speaks Afrikaans. It is somebody who has Afrikaans traditions, who has an Afrikaner heritage, perhaps has family, speaks Afrikaans as a first language. These are all positive components that make up a cultural entity like the Afrikaners. I think we should stop approaching things from a negative side. You start with what will prevent me. Rather ask what will enable you. And yes, with Mr. Manyi, we'd had a good day. We had a busy day. And we discussed a lot of topics.
Okay.
And amongst them, the race question came up, but was dealt with. It is not about race, it is about culture.
So I would need, just briefly, because what I'm saying is I would need to describe myself as a full-blooded Afrikaner with love for the Afrikaans people. I mean, how...
And speak Afrikaans. Yeah. You see, what I really think that, firstly, I must give them a compliment for receiving us warmly and all of that, and with a matured discussion with the people of Kleinfontein. I want us to continue on that theme. If they go to the... I've quoted chapter 1 in the Constitution. Now I can even take you to chapter 2 on the section on equality. Subsection 3 lists all the things that you cannot discriminate on the basis of. One of them is race, sex, and this, but one of them is culture. So the point that he's making is not sustainable in terms of the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, because the Constitution says you cannot use the culture to exclude, and this is what they're doing. They're saying, no, we're not using race. Okay, tick a box, you're not using race, but you're using culture. You are saying I must be a full-blooded Afrikaner, I must love Afrikaans, I must assimilate in Afrikaans and all of that. So if I don't do that, then I'm not accepting that culture. And because I'm not accepting that culture, I'm excluded.